These are the 11 Formula One teams ranked after the Japanese Grand Prix. The order is already clearer than most people expected, and some of the stories developing inside that order are extraordinary. We go through every team and explain exactly where each one stands and why. Aston Martin came into 2026 with serious ambitions and arrived at Suzuka in crisis mode. Fernando Alonso had not completed a full race distance in the opening 2 rounds of the season, and the team spent those early weekends openly describing the work as reliability, firefighting rather than racing. Japan brought the team's first modest upgrade package, and the result was Alonso finishing 18th, a full lap down on race winner Kimi Antonelli, with 0 points to show for the weekend. Lance Stroll did not reach the finish at all, retiring after 30 laps with a suspected water pressure issue. The team representatives summed up the weekend with a bluntness that said everything. In Australia, they were discussing doing 6 laps. In China, they managed 2 sessions after enormous effort just to get through the weekend. At Suzuka, the cars were at least prepared normally between sessions, and that was described as progress. Alonso confirmed the Honda power unit vibration issue that had plagued the team earlier in the season was still present at Suzuka but manageable enough to complete the race distance, and that alone was treated as a significant achievement. The bigger problem for Aston Martin is no longer just reliability, it is pace. While they were fighting to survive, every other team was extracting more performance from their launch packages. Aston Martin stayed still and fell further behind. 0 points after 3 rounds, and Miami is being framed internally as the moment they need to show whether any of that gap can close. Cadillac also sit on 0 points, but their Suzuka story was meaningfully different. The American team is treating this opening phase as a learning exercise rather than a points campaign. Sergio Perez finished 17th, on the lead lap and ahead of Alonso. Valtteri Bottas crossed the line in 19th. That gave the team a double finish for the second consecutive race, and both Cadillacs outqualified both Aston Martins on Saturday. Perez called Japan their strongest race weekend so far. An upgrade package is planned for Miami, and for a brand new constructor, finishing on the lead lap and beating an established team is exactly the kind of marker they can build on. Audi and Williams are occupying the same difficult territory. 2 teams using race weekends mainly to understand what they have rather than to compete for results. Nico Hülkenberg crossed the line in 11th for Audi, Gabriel Bortoleto in 13th. Neither scored points. Williams had a harder afternoon. Carlos Sainz finished 15th and Alex Albon needed 6 pit stops before crossing the line in 20th. Audi currently holds 2 points in the Constructors' Championship from earlier in the season, and Williams holds none. Both teams are working through the enormous complexity of the 2026 regulations, chasing consistency before they can begin pushing for performance. That process takes time, and the current standings reflect where they genuinely are right now. Racing Bulls deserve more attention than the standings currently suggest. They sit 7th in the Constructors' Championship on 14 points, and only 3 points separate them from Red Bull, the team that is supposed to be their parent outfit. Liam Lawson finished 9th at Suzuka to score 2 more points, and that result extended a run of scoring in 2 of his 3 attempts across the 2026 season so far. The Racing Bulls story is not just about small points hauls, it is about the context of those points. They are currently faster than Red Bull in race trim, and that is not a boast from the junior team. It is simply what the results show. Lawson had been outqualified by rookie teammate Arvid Lindblad on Saturday at Suzuka, but recovered well during the race to finish inside the top 10. The consistency Racing Bulls are showing is something their senior counterpart has completely failed to match. 4 consecutive times at Suzuka, Verstappen had taken pole position and won the race. At the 2026 Japanese Grand Prix, he was eliminated in the second qualifying session and started 11th. He finished 8th, held there for much of the second half of the race by Pierre Gasly in an Alpine, unable to find a way past. Gasly took the flag just 0.337 seconds ahead of him. After the race, Verstappen used a description of Red Bull that he has never needed to use before at this circuit. He said the team is more in the midfield battle now than at the front, and he said it openly, without any suggestion he believed it was temporary. His frustration with the 2026 regulations has been building all season. He described the new cars as driving like Mario Kart. He called the racing a joke. In Japan, he told reporters he is not even frustrated anymore. He is beyond frustrated, and that telling himself to give 100% is not very healthy because he is not enjoying what he is doing. Teammate Isaac Hadjar described the Red Bull car at Suzuka as hard to drive and slow, and added that last year's car was at least fast even if it was difficult to handle. Hadjar finished 12th. Team principal Laurent Mekies acknowledged the team is missing overall performance across many different areas and needs time to analyze data before Miami. The core problem at Red Bull runs deeper than chassis balance. Under the 2026 power unit regulations, the 50-50 split between internal combustion and electrical power means that much of the decision-making around torque delivery is handled by machine learning algorithms rather than the driver's right foot. The system is programmed to begin every lap with a full battery, and if a driver pushes too hard through corners, the system punishes them with reduced power on the straights. For a driver who built his entire career on full commitment through corners, this is deeply uncomfortable territory. Red Bull has 5 weeks before Miami to find solutions, and nobody in the paddock is pretending this is a minor setback. They currently sit 9th in the Drivers' Championship on 12 points, behind both Haas and Alpine. Alpine are 5th in the Constructors' Championship on 16 points, tied with Red Bull on that same total, and that single fact tells you everything you need to know about the state of the 2026 pecking order. Gasly has scored points in every round of the season so far, and his 7th-place finish at Suzuka came from a disciplined, composed drive under serious pressure. He held off a desperate Verstappen for the majority of the second half of the race, and the image of a former Red Bull driver keeping the current Red Bull star at arm's length while Verstappen grew increasingly frustrated behind him was one of the defining moments of the weekend. Alpine are not just improving in the standings, they are pulling real performance from the 2026 regulations at exactly the right time. Haas arrived in Japan with 17 points and Oliver Bearman sitting 5th in the Drivers' Championship. They left with their constructors' position intact, but also with a story that will define how people talk about the 2026 regulations for a long time. On lap 22 of 53, Bearman was chasing Franco Colapinto on the high-speed approach to Spoon Curve. Colapinto's Alpine entered battery harvesting mode, cutting power to 0 kilowatts. Spoon Curve falls within one of those designated harvesting zones under the 2026 regulations. At the same moment, Bearman's Haas was running under boost, and the closing speed between the two cars reached approximately 50 kilometers per hour. Doing over 190 miles per hour, Bearman had nowhere to go. He moved left onto the grass, lost control, crossed the circuit sideways, and hit the barriers hard. The impact registered at 50 G. He climbed out of the car but could barely walk, was taken to the medical center, given an X-ray, and cleared of fractures, though he suffered bruising to his right knee. His response after the race was measured but pointed. He said it was a massive overspeed, that this is a part of the new regulations the drivers have to get used to, and that the drivers had warned the FIA as a group what could happen. The stewards reviewed the incident and took no further action against Colapinto. The ruling was that the crash was a consequence of the regulations rather than anything Colapinto did wrong. The FIA issued a statement confirming a structured review of the 2026 regulations would take place after the opening phase of the season. Carlos Sainz, speaking as part of the Grand Prix Drivers Association, asked people to imagine those closing speeds on the streets of Baku, Singapore, or Las Vegas, circuits with no escape roads. McLaren team principal Andrea Stella had raised this exact concern during preseason testing in February, and after the crash, he said the accident was not a surprise. Esteban Ocon scored the points for Haas in Japan, finishing 10th, and the team hold 4th in the Constructors' Championship on 18 points despite losing Bearman to the crash. McLaren had missed the Chinese Grand Prix entirely. Oscar Piastri had not started a single race in 2026 before Japan, and he arrived at Suzuka, qualified 3rd, and then produced a stunning launch off the line to take the lead into Turn 1. He held that position for over a third of the race, managing the pressure of both Mercedes cars behind him for 22 laps. When the safety car came out for the Bearman crash, Antonelli, who had not yet pitted, took the opportunity under the caution period, came out ahead, and the strategic picture shifted completely. Piastri finished 2nd, denied a genuine shot at what would have been a stunning victory. Whether Piastri could have held Antonelli in the second stint remains the unanswered question from the Japanese Grand Prix, and Antonelli's pace after the restart suggested Mercedes had the outright edge at Suzuka. What McLaren established, though, was something more important than a hypothetical. A team that had barely competed arrived in Japan and left with a podium and a clear message that they are the biggest threat to Mercedes as the season develops. Lando Norris finished 5th after a close battle with Lewis Hamilton in the final stages of the race, and McLaren now hold 56 points in the Constructors' Championship, 40 clear of Red Bull. They sit 3rd, but 34 points separate them from second-place Ferrari, and there is a lot of racing left. Ferrari have done something quietly steady in 2026. They have been on the podium in every single one of the 3 races held so far. Charles Leclerc finished third in Japan after holding off George Russell in the closing stages. Lewis Hamilton ran as high as a podium position early before eventually finishing 6th. The pace is there and the consistency is real. The challenge for Ferrari is what sits above them. Mercedes hold 135 points, Ferrari hold 90, and that 45-point gap after just 3 rounds is a number that matters. The problem that has followed Ferrari all season is energy deployment. Under the 2026 regulations, managing the electrical power split is as important as raw mechanical grip, and Ferrari have not yet found the optimal balance. Leclerc and Hamilton are both capable of fighting at the very front. The question is whether the car is giving them everything it has, and the honest answer so far is not quite yet. Ferrari will use the April break before Miami to analyze where time is being lost. The underlying pace is real, but a step forward rather than just consistency will be needed to close that gap. Mercedes have won all 3 races of the 2026 season up to the Japanese Grand Prix, lead the Constructors' Championship by 45 points, and their lead driver is 19 years old, has won back-to-back races, and now holds the record as the youngest championship leader in the history of Formula One. Kimi Antonelli is 19 years and 216 days old. At Suzuka, he took pole position by almost 0.3 of a second over teammate George Russell, endured a poor start that dropped him to 6th, and then worked his way back through the field. When the safety car deployed on lap 22, Antonelli pitted from the lead, having held off making his stop until that moment, came out in front, and built a winning margin of 13.722 seconds over Piastri. He is the first teenager in the history of Formula One to win back-to-back races. He is the first Italian to lead the championship standings since Giancarlo Fisichella after the 2005 Australian Grand Prix. The record for the youngest championship leader had been held by Lewis Hamilton since the 2007 Spanish Grand Prix, when Hamilton was 22 years, 5 months, and 6 days old, and Antonelli broke it at 19 years. He acknowledged after the race that the safety car timing was fortunate, admitted his start was terrible, and said he was lucky to be in the lead position when the caution came out. He also said the pace in the second stint was incredible and that he felt very comfortable with the car. Both things are true. Russell trails his teammate by 9 points in the Drivers' Championship, sitting on 63 points with Antonelli on 72. Japan showed that Piastri can pressure them over a race distance, so they are not untouchable. Right now, though, they are the team to beat, with a 19-year-old at the wheel who's only growing more comfortable every weekend. The next round is Miami, 1st to 3rd, May 2026. Every team has 5 weeks to work. The standings will shift, but the questions raised in Japan about pace, safety, and regulation design are going nowhere. Please subscribe to the channel to stay across every development before Miami. I'll see you in the next one.